Good afternoon, good day, good evening, everyone. I am excited to be here to teach you some concepts in chemistry. And today I'll be explaining the topic redox reaction. Now, what is redox reaction? Redox reactions mean reaction that involves reduction and oxidation. The RED means reduction and the OX means oxidation. Now, I'll be explaining to you the meaning of these two concepts. So let me start with oxidation. Now, what is oxidation? We define oxidation in three major ways. Number one, oxidation means the addition of oxygen. So it means whenever an atom or element or a compound gains oxygen, such compound or um, such element is said to be oxidized. When there's a gain of oxygen or there's an addition of oxygen to an element or to a compound, such element or compound is said to be oxidized. Now let me give you a simple equation or reaction. It involves carbon and oxygen. When carbon reacts with oxygen to give you carbon 4 oxide, carbon reacting with oxygen produces carbon 4 oxide. This simple reaction is an oxidation reaction because carbon gains oxygen. So I can say carbon is oxidized. Another definition of oxidation is when an atom or when a compound loses hydrogen. So I'll say removal of hydrogen. So whenever an atom or a compound loses hydrogen, such compound or such element is said to undergo oxidation. I'll give you another equation to explain that. Hydrogen sulfide H2S reacting with chlorine produces HCl and sulfur. Now, look at this equation. In this equation, can you tell me which compound or which element loses hydrogen? Obviously, hydrogen sulfide here, as you can see, loses hydrogen to turn to sulfur. So the transformation of hydrogen sulfide from the reactant side to the product side involves the loss of hydrogen. As you can see, H2S, ordinary S, hydrogen has been lost from H2S. So I will say hydrogen sulfide is oxidized. So that means when a compound or element loses hydrogen, such compound or element is said to be oxidized. The third way we can explain oxidation is the loss of electron. So whenever an element or compound loses electron, such compound or element is said to be oxidized. To make it very easy, loss of electron also means increase in the oxidation number. Now, it means when there is an increase in the oxidation number of an atom or of a compound, let me say an atom, such atom is said to undergo oxidation. So it's another version of saying loss of electron. Now, I'll give you a simple one. When we have iron 2 going to ion 3. The transformation here is oxidation. As you can see, the 2 plus changes to what? 3 plus. Okay, let me say plus 2 plus 3. So this is oxidation because obviously there's an increase in the oxidation number of iron. From plus 2, it increased to plus 3. Now let me give you a reaction to explain that. Iron 2 chloride reacting with chlorine to produce iron 3. Now look at this. Iron 2 chloride in this situation is set to undergo oxidation because the oxidation number of iron in this compound, in this reaction, is plus 2. But at the product side, the oxidation number became plus 3. That's why we call this compound iron 2 chloride. And this compound we call this iron 3 chloride. So I would say iron is oxidized, or iron 2 is oxidized to iron 3. So this is a typical example of oxidation involving increase in oxidation number. Now, let me now go to the concept of reduction. Before I move to reduction, I would like to briefly explain again the 3 ways we can define or explain oxidation. Number 1 is addition of oxygen. Whenever an atom or a compound gains oxygen, such atom or compound is said to be oxidized. I gave an equation here when carbon gains oxygen to give CO2. Carbon is said to be oxidized. Another way you can define oxidation is removal of hydrogen. When there is a removal of hydrogen or loss of hydrogen in a reaction, the compound that loses hydrogen is said to undergo oxidation. Now look at this. Hydrogen sulfide. Hydrogen sulfide transformed into sulfur. The loss of hydrogen occurred in that transformation. So hydrogen sulfide is oxidized because it lost oxygen. Sorry, it lost hydrogen to become sulfur. Is that clear? So whenever there is a loss of hydrogen, we call such a reaction oxidation. And the final one is also loss of electron, which I simplified into meaning increase in oxidation number. Whenever there is an increase in oxidation number of an atom or an ion, such reaction is said to be oxidation. In my next explanation, in my next video, I will explain in details how to calculate oxidation number, because some students may not be able to calculate oxidation number of atoms. So if you can calculate the oxidation number of an atom, you may not be able to determine when that atom is oxidized or reduced. Now, I will go to the next concept, which is reduction. Reduction. Now, reduction can also be explained using 3 major definitions. And let me tell you this, reduction is the opposite of oxidation. Once you can understand oxidation, then know that the opposite of oxidation is reduction. Now I'll start. I told you that oxidation involves the gain or the addition of oxygen. Definitely reduction will be the loss or removal of oxygen. So whenever an element or a compound loses oxygen, such compound is said to be oxidized. Whenever a compound loses oxygen, such compound is said to be oxidized. Now, I can give this example. Copper oxide. Copper 2 oxide reacts with carbon. We get copper plus CO2. This reaction is a reduction reaction. You can guess of course which compound undergo reduction here. Which compound undergo reduction means which compound loses oxygen. Your guess is good as mine. Copper oxide undergoes reduction because it lost oxygen to become copper. As you can see, in the reactant side, oxygen is involved, but in the product side, no oxygen is involved. So we can say that this reaction is a reduction reaction. So I would be right if I say copper 2 oxide is reduced to copper because oxygen has been removed. So that's for the first way to define it, loss of oxygen. The second way you can define reduction is gain or addition of hydrogen. Don't forget I told you that the opposite of oxidation is reduction. Now, when a compound or when an element gains hydrogen, such element or compound is said to undergo reduction. I'll use the same example I used during my oxidation to explain this. H2S reacting with chlorine to give you HCl. Now, in my previous explanation, I said H2S lost hydrogen, therefore H2S is oxidized. Now, I hope you can tell me or you can see clearly which element gained hydrogen. Look at it. Which element gained hydrogen? Obviously, chlorine gained hydrogen because chlorine transformed here into HCl. There is no hydrogen here at the reactant side, but on the other side there is an hydrogen. Therefore, chlorine is reduced. Very simple, isn't it? Chlorine is reduced to HCl. So we can say chlorine undergoes reduction. And finally, we can also say reduction is what? Is gain of electron. Don't forget I said that oxidation is loss of electron. So reduction will be what? Gain of electron. Which also means decrease in oxidation number. It means what? Decrease in oxidation number. So it will be easy for you to understand the increase and decrease pattern of loss and gain of electron. So whenever there is a decrease in the oxidation number of an element or an ion, such ion or element is said to undergo reduction. Look at this. Ion 3 transforming to ion 2. This is reduction. For don't forget I said it is gain of electron. That means ion 3 gain an electron to become ion 2. The gain of one electron made it become ion 2, which is gain of electron. Or there is a decrease in the oxidation number. From plus 3, it decreased to plus 2. I hope that's very simple. I hope that's clear to everybody. Alright, I will delve more, I will go deeper towards how to calculate oxidation number, because in some reaction you may not be able to determine if such reaction is redox if you don't know how to calculate oxidation number. But I believe if it involves oxygen and hydrogen and change in the charges, you'll be able to determine oxidation from there. Alright. So the next aspect I'll be looking at is oxidizing agents and reducing agents. Oxidizing agent and what? Reducing agents. Now, when I say oxidizing agents, it's a very simple term. Don't get confused. Oxidizing agents, they are agents of oxidation. That means they make oxidation happen. That means